Hi everybody, welcome back to tnoozLIVE at GBTA, presented by BCD Travel. Martin Cowan, Editorial Director for Tnooz. Delighted to have got Dan
Ruch.
Ruch, I should have checked that before. Dan
That's
Ruch from Rocketrip.
Happens all the time.
Dan Ruch from Rocketrip, who's going to explain to us what Rocketrip is and how it's relevant in a corporate travel context.
Sure. So Rocketrip is the leading provider of behavioral change tools to the corporate travel space. Our mission is to build great company cultures by recognizing and rewarding extraordinary behavior, extraordinary decisions that employees make with respect to the purchasing decisions around business travel. So simply stated, employees today operate within the boundaries of a company policy. We motivate and reward extraordinary decisions within the boundaries of that policy, but decisions that employees may or may not have otherwise have selected. So if you're allowed to fly business class, we will reward you for flying coach. If you're allowed to stay in a 4-star hotel, we'll reward you for staying in a 3-star hotel or staying with a friend. If you're allowed to book 14 days in advance, we'll reward you for booking 21 days in advance. So across a spectrum of behaviors that are discretionary, we're able to reduce the company's travel spend somewhere between 15 and 20%, but more importantly than that, create cultures where people are inspired to go above and beyond the call of duty, because for the first time ever, there's something in it for them. There's really this sort of employee-employer reciprocity and culture of empowerment and autonomy.
Okay, and what might these rewards be?
So employees actually keep 50 cents on the dollar for every dollar they save the company. That value gets transferred into a bank account that employees can redeem through the Rocketrip gift store for a variety of merchandise. Really depends on the country that the employee resides in, but it's everything from Bloomingdale's to Best Buy, donations to charity, to travel rewards, gifting points to colleagues, etc.
Okay, so Rocketrip, as I understand it, was founded in 2013?
That's right.
We nominally call you a startup. Do you see yourself as a startup?
Yeah. Well, we're venture backed and we're privately held, and for all intents and purposes, we're a startup.
Okay, so how has the business changed in those 5 years? I mean, how has the business changed, but also how has the landscape in which you operate changed, and has the landscape forced the change, or have you changed the landscape? I mean, what's the push-pull dynamic happening there?
Well, so the biggest change has been scale. We started with 2 people and 2 desks, and now we're about 80 people, all based in New York City. We raised money from the likes of Google Ventures and Bessemer Venture Partners, and went through Y Combinator, which is a fairly well-known accelerator program in California. The most fundamental change to the business over the last 5 years has been our sort of target market segmentation, our ideal customer profile. When I first started the business, the thesis was that we would approach companies, the lowest hanging fruit were companies that were smaller, unmanaged travel businesses. And so we built a platform where employees would get a budget to beat from Rocketrip and then go out into the unmanaged open market, beat it, tell us what they spent, and we would award them half the difference. We've since moved up market, and now we exclusively focus on call it the Fortune 2000, but really any company with a managed travel program. So we typically target companies that spend at least 5 million, if not 10 million, on corporate travel, and we inject our experience into the existing travel management solution that company uses. So if they use Concur's online booking tool and BCD, our experience would live inside of that experience, so that for the employee, there's no change to workflow, there's no switching cost for the company, they're not replacing any part of their infrastructure, they're simply layering Rocketrip. Think of Rocketrip as really a bonus program on top of an existing policy that optimizes the chances for a very favorable outcome for both the company and the employee.
Yeah, okay, so you said that you work within an existing program, and when you were at a session this morning, which was Tales from Travel Startups, one of the many things that you said of interest was this whole idea around leakage, and when there's so much content at GBTA around bots and NDC and APIs, and actually the real elephant in the room is that for quite a lot of travel policies, 50% of people are booking outside of policy. So I mean, you encourage travelers to book within policy by rewarding them.
Well, it's a byproduct of our product. It's a byproduct of a well-managed program where Rocketrip is installed, because the benefits are only are only available if the employee goes through the approved booking channel. I think your comment, though, is a good one in that this industry spends an awful lot of time thinking about the future and what's next. I think it's important that we be introspective and recognize that what we're doing today, in a lot of ways, is not working. When the average, and this is a quote from the folks at Concur, when the average company's hotel spend has 50% leakage, something is fundamentally wrong with that program. And I think this industry tends to want to keep its heads down for fear of what might happen if that information is exposed to the leadership of the organizations we work for. But I think we're much better off getting out in front of that conversation and start thinking about ways that we can create better solutions, better ways to capture more of that spend, instead of piling on new technology that really at best is going to exacerbate that problem, not solve it.
Yeah, so I mean, you think that there is still a role for policy within business travel, it just needs to be...
I think policy is essential. I think, so our thesis at Rocketrip, and this is a little bit controversial, but generally speaking...
Carry on.
By and large, we think that human beings are two things. They are lazy and they are selfish. And that doesn't make us bad people, that makes us human. We will always optimize in the best interests of self-preservation. So we will always do the most comfortable, convenient thing for us as individuals within the boundaries of a particular set of rules. This is why governments have laws. If governments didn't have laws, chaos would ensue. This is why companies have policy. Everything from the clothes we wear to the time we show up to the travel products we can purchase is governed by a policy. The problem, and policy is good and it's effective. It's very, very effective at stipulating tolerated behavior, but it doesn't contemplate optimized behavior. And there's a huge amount of room between what is tolerated and what is optimal, and that's where Rocketrip fits in. So Rocketrip is actually not a replacement for a company travel policy. We actually won't work with a company that doesn't have an established travel program and travel policy because it's too hard to define what would have happened otherwise, right? So we need a policy, a well-managed policy, a well-followed policy to help a client understand here's where you were and here's where we can get you to. But if a client doesn't know where they are because they have no rules, no boundaries, no policy, it's very difficult for us to prove success of our products.
Okay, I mean, looping back to what you were talking about earlier when you said that Rocketrip can help sort of corporations reduce the travel costs, but also sort of improve culture. I mean, in a world where everything is managed, where everything is data, I mean, how do you quantify improved culture?
I mean, over the years, HR teams have gotten, human resources teams have gotten incredibly good at measuring the return on investment of investments in various areas of employee benefits and retention, recruitment efforts and programs. ESAT, employee satisfaction scores, are effectively the standard of how culture is measured, but there's a variety of tools and systems at Rocketrip. We use one twice a year and we audit our entire staff to look at how are we doing in terms of managing the culture of the organization, what are the various tools and services that our employees value, more importantly, what are the various tools and services that they're asking for, and how can we create an environment where people are inspired to come to work every day? Because at the end of the day, travel and expense is an incredibly large cost center on a P&L, second only to staff. And that's really interesting. We care more here about how we are managing the cost of our travel program than we do about the number one cost center on a given P&L, which is our staff. So if we start investing and being more thoughtful about the tools and services we provide to our staff, we might find that there are travel programs that align at the perfect intersection of reducing our corporate travel costs and improving culture for the staff that we are all sort of supporting and spending so much money to build. And I think that's a really interesting concept where Rocketrip actually, if you think about it, fits squarely within the pain points and solving for the pain points of the first and second largest operating expense areas of a typical
one of
P&L.
my favorite analogies is the Venn diagram. It's that intersection between the staff costs and the travel expense costs, and Rocketrip sits there in that sweet spot of being relevant to both.
That's right, but not in a draconian way. So we're not forcing a reduction in spend, and that's really important. Any reduction in spend is coming out of the voluntary enthusiasm and interest of an employee to make a different decision because they've made a choice that they would rather take their family on vacation than fly business class to London. Or they've made a choice that they would rather renovate their home than stay at the Westin. Or they've made a choice that they'd rather donate to charity than book 7 days in advance. And so this is all about optionality and opportunity for employees. It's all about, in a lean forward, non-draconian, non-intrusive way, how can we better align the interests of an employee with the interests of the company. And in doing so, not only reduce costs, but again, optimize for culture.
Okay, I mean, fascinating talking to you. I really like the idea of being able to somehow incentivize employees to operate within policy by rewarding them.
Well, so this is an important distinction. We believe, and we start at the point of, we expect all employees to operate within policy. If your employees are breaking policy, Rocketrip doesn't solve for that problem. Rocketrip is not a bonus program to encourage employees to comply. Your policy is what should encourage employees to comply. Now, if they don't follow policy, my suggestion is you've got other issues inside the organization with what are the boundaries of policy and how do you enforce them. And if you aren't willing to enforce policies, then they're not policies, they're guidelines at best, and that's fine, but that's a decision you have to make. We started from the position that all employees are following policy. How do we get employees motivated and rewarded to go below policy, to go above and beyond the call of duty, to do something that is within policy, but they wouldn't otherwise do unless they were so properly motivated. And that is what I think is so special about our program.
Okay. All right, well, Dan, thanks very much for your time. I'm sure you've got a busy couple of days here, so great that you were able to give us 10 minutes.
Pleasure.
Lovely talking to you.
Thanks very much for the time.
Right, this is Tnooz Live at GBTA, presented by BCD Travel. Martin Cowan, contributing editor for Tnooz. I'll be back shortly. Thank you very much.